Hello and welcome to Life Reviewed. This is episode 3 and part 3 of my Planet of the Apes retrospective. Today I'm going to be looking at Escape from the Planet of the Apes, the third film in the series from 1971. It was directed by Don Taylor and written by Paul Dean, the writer from the previous film Beneath. It stars Roddy McDowall makes a fantastic return as Cornelius, Kim Hunter as Zira, Bradford Dillman plays Dr. Lewis Dixon, Natalie Trundy plays Dr. Stephanie Branton, Eric Braden plays Dr. Otto Haslane, and William Wyndham plays the President. Also in smaller roles, Sal Mineo plays a third ape named Milo, and way down in the credits we have the wonderful Ricardo Montalban as Armando, the head of the circus. So I'll start by saying I'm not alone in thinking that this is a really great film. I'm seeing here that it's the top reviewed of any of the Planet of the Apes sequels, the 4 sequels following the original film. It seems to be a fan favorite and a critical favorite as well. And it's a really strong movie. It's actually... it has a lot of drama, it has a lot of humor, and it's even though it has science fiction origins, and certainly is based off a science fiction franchise, it does hold its own as a standalone picture, and I think that is a lot of the appeal. And also, you know, before this film, in the first 2 films, the apes, as great as Cornelius and Zira are, they are really overshadowed by the villain apes in those movies. And because the apes are so terrifying, you know, Zira and Cornelius being like kind and helpful you can't really latch on to them as characters because you're following, you know, the human characters, and the villains are just so, you know, interesting. And so you have Dr. Zaius in the first film, who's by far steals the show, and General Ursus in the second film, which nobody can, you know, even touch, you know, as far as an interesting character, you know, an interesting ape character in Beneath. So, you know, finally, Zira and Cornelius get a film to shine in, and I think this was a really smart choice because, man, are they like lovable, and you really fall in love with these characters pretty early on, and I think this was a way of kind of putting the apes as the main characters. These are the characters we're going to follow throughout the whole film, and so let's get into the plot first. And this is a pretty lengthy plot summary, so there's just so much that happens in this film. Here we go. The preceding film, Beneath the Planet of the Apes, ends with the apes' future Earth being destroyed by a nuclear weapon. Escape from the Planet of the Apes begins by establishing that 3 apes, Cornelius, Zira, and Dr. Milo, escaped the Earth's destruction by salvaging and repairing Taylor's spaceship and piloting it through the shockwave of Earth's destruction, sending the ship through a time warp. The salvage, repair, and launch all happen off-camera during the final act of the previous film. The apes arrive on Earth in 1973, splashing down off the Pacific coast of the United States. They're transported to a secluded ward of the Los Angeles Zoo under the observation of scientists Dr. Stephanie Branton and Dr. Lewis Dixon. The apes decide not to let the humans know that they can speak. They also agree not to let them know that the Earth will be destroyed because of the ape war. Later, the ape's power of speech is revealed when Zira becomes impatient during an experiment. Soon after, Dr. Milo is killed by a zoo gorilla who becomes agitated during an argument amongst the 3 chimpanzees. Lewis tries to communicate with the apes that he is peaceful and he wishes to treat them as equals, and Cornelius and Zira form a friendship with him and Dr. Branton. A presidential commission is formed to investigate the return of Taylor's spaceship and determine how atypically intelligent apes came to be aboard it. The apes are brought before the commission, where they publicly reveal their ability to speak. The council asks them about Taylor, but Cornelius and Zira tell them that they know nothing about him. They reveal that they came from the future and escaped Earth when war broke out. They are welcomed as guests of the government, Cornelia and Zira secretly tell Stephanie and Lewis that they did know about Taylor, explain how humans are treated in the ape-dominated future, and about the Earth's destruction. Stephanie and Lewis are shocked but still sympathetic. They tell Cornelius and Zira to keep this information secret until they can gauge the potential reaction of their hosts. The apes become celebrities and are lavished with gifts and media attention. They come to the attention of the president's science advisor, Dr. Otto Haslin, who discovers Zira is pregnant. Fearing for the future of the human race, he offers her champagne, which she's developed a taste for, to loosen her inhibitions and question her further. Her candid responses enable him to convince the commission that Cornelius and Zira must be subjected to more rigorous questioning. Haslin insists that he simply wants to know how apes became dominant over men. Cornelius reveals that the human race will cause its own downfall and become dominated by simians, and that simian aggression against humans will lead to Earth's destruction by a weapon made by humans. Zira explains that the gorillas started the war and the orangutans supported the gorillas, but the chimpanzees had nothing to do with it. Haslin suspects that the apes are not speaking the whole truth. During the original hearing, Zira had accidentally revealed that she dissected humans in the course of her work. Haslin orders Lewis to administer a truth serum to her, while Cornelius is confined elsewhere. Lewis assures Zira that the serum will have the same effect as champagne. As a result of the serum, Haslin learns details about Zira's examination and experimentation on humans. An orderly at the hospital refers to their unborn child as a little monkey. Cornelius, having previously expressed his disgust at that term, loses his temper and knocks a food tray out of the orderly's hand. The orderly falls to the floor. Cornelius believes that the man is only unconscious, but he's actually dead. Haslin uses the tragedy in support of his claim that the apes are dangerous to humanity, and he calls for their execution. The president reluctantly orders Zira's pregnancy to be terminated and that both apes be sterilized, but will not endorse punishment for the orderly's death until due process has been served. Branton and Dixon help the apes to escape and find them shelter in the circus run by Signor Armando, where an ape named Heloise has just given birth. Zira gives birth to a son, who she names Milo in honor of their deceased friend. Haslin, knowing that Zira's labor was imminent, orders a search of all circuses and zoos. Armando insists that for their own safety, the apes must not stay. Lewis gives Cornelius a pistol, and Cornelius, formerly a pacifist, accepts the pistol, knowing he may have to use it as a last resort. The apes take refuge on an abandoned ship in Los Angeles Harbor. Haslin tracks them there and finds Zira resting with an infant. Haslin shoots Zira after she refuses to hand over the infant, and then fires several shots into the infant. Cornelius returns fire and kills Haslin. Cornelius is shot by an unseen sniper and falls. Zira tosses the dead baby over the side and crawls to die with her husband, witnessed by a grieving Lewis and Stephanie. Armando reveals that Zira and Cornelius switched babies with the common ape before their escape, and also assures the infant Milo that he will take care of him forever. When Armando leaves him alone, Milo plaintively asks for his mother. Okay, so that was a mouthful. A lot going on in this movie. It is like a full-out drama with a bunch of different characters and motivations. But let's just start from the beginning. So the intro is really great. You know, the spaceship crash lands, and you know the three astronauts get out, and they don't reveal, even though we already know, you know, that they're the apes, but it's a big reveal to the humans that, you know, they're apes inside of the astronaut suits. And then it goes into this really fantastic stuff when they're in the zoo and they're like super intelligent and they're using plates and they're using, you know, forks and knives, and they're acing all of the sort of standardized tests that they would give to chimps. They're super intelligent, but they're refusing to speak because they don't want to give away their secret quite yet. And then that gorilla kills Milo. There's a costume person, like somebody in like a traditional looking gorilla costume that's really awful looking, but grabs Milo through the cage and strangles him to death. And then Zira can't take it anymore. She just decides she wants to talk, and they make friends with the two doctors. Where the film really gets great is the commission hearing. and Zira and Cornelius really go out to kind of like all out to sell themselves as these like hilarious, lovable couple where they make all these like very human jokes about marriage and like sort of like she's the boss kind of stuff, which endears them to the public, and then they become celebrities. And there's this big montage of them, going clothes shopping, and they are like having big dinner parties and getting, drunk on champagne, which they kind of trick Azira into thinking it's grape juice plus. And this stuff is all gold. This is just great character interaction. We are loving Zira and Cornelius, just like the public. We're falling in love with them, and they're becoming celebrities. And it really, it takes this Haslin villain to kind of come in and ruin everything for everyone, because it just feels like there's got to be more to the story. And he does this sort of like seduction where he sort of feeds her a bunch of champagne, so that she gets drunk enough to kind of give him a little bit of information. And then that's the jumping on point where he's like, well, they lied about this, so maybe they're lying about other stuff. And this is where it turns into a little bit more almost like a political thriller, where he's trying to get them executed, or at least the baby aborted, and some other like devious stuff. But he has some, rational logic behind. I mean, these are talking apes from the future, and they're admitting, like under truth serum and alcohol, that the human is going to be destroyed and the planet is going to be destroyed. So he's an interesting, quote unquote villain, because it's not that surprising that somebody would, want to look deeper into what they're saying. But Zira and Cornelius are so likable in this movie that you have to side with them for the whole thing. So Ricardo Montalban is perfect, as always, as Armando. And when they meet him in the end, when they're sort of under protection, he steals every shot, like every scene that he's in, unsurprisingly. And then it, like I said, it becomes sort of a political thriller. They give her the truth serum, which is a really like dark scene, and they pull Cornelius out of the room, and he's like screaming like don't do that to my wife. And then they give her the serum, and she like fades in and out and like reveals all this information. And then they put them in the room, and then he accidentally kills the orderly, and then they're on the run. And they're hiding out, and they're tricking the guard and running into the bushes. She's like going into labor, and he's trying to help her. And then they finally are able to hide out. And the movie culminates in this like tragic, like really like graphic and awful like ending where, I just read it in the plot description, pretty much everyone's shot. They shoot Zira, they shoot the baby, it's under like this tarp. And then Cornelius is shooting at Haslin, and then he gets shot, falls, like this really like gross looking like shot where he falls from the top of the ship and just like hits the deck. And then Zira crawls over to the baby and throws it overboard, in which it just like lands in the water, and then crawls and lays on top of Cornelius, and they just die. And I mean, aside from the baby throwing, I feel like it would have been a little more natural for her to pick up the dead baby and bring it over, and they die as a family, even though it's not really her baby. It just seems kind of harsh to just chuck it in the water, but that's what she does. And then it fades out, and we see Armando, who has switched the apes, from the baby ape he had in his circus, with Milo, and then Milo's holding the bars and kind of saying like "mama" or asking for his mom, which shows how intelligent he is. But this movie really is like a standalone film. I feel like if you hadn't even watched the other two movies, you could really enjoy this. There's a lot of humor. It's really great characters. All of the this is like Roddy McDowall at his best up until this point, and Zira and him really get like the limelight. And as I said before, having a main ape character, it really helps us connect with. Now we've connected with humans, and now we're connecting with apes in this film. And yeah, I mean, I think the one other interesting thing to really talk about is whether or not they had this planned. I don't know, but when you've destroyed the whole planet at the end of Beneath, you don't have a lot of options. And the idea that Zira, Cornelius, and Milo were working on this project to restore Taylor's ship at the same time that Ursus was invading the subterranean, mutants colony is very interesting, and that they rode the shockwave out. They saw the Earth being destroyed, and then they took that knowledge back to 1973, which is 1 year after Taylor had left in the spaceship. I think it's a great plot, but it certainly takes the series in a different direction. And this is really kind of the sticking point when it comes to timeline, which I may do an entire episode just on the Planet of the Apes timeline, because this is where it really, really changes. His testimony in this movie about how apes took over is a big sticking point, because as we're about to see in future films, them coming back in time actually changed the history that Cornelius actually described. It's completely different than what he had described, and events happen very differently. So, there's two viewpoints on the timeline of the Planet of the Apes, whether it's totally cyclical and it, just keeps going in a loop, or if this is an altered timeline. So that's, a discussion for another video. So my rating for this film is a solid 8 out of 10. I think, like I've said multiple times, it is a great standalone movie. You do obviously get more enjoyment having seen the previous two films, but I think anybody would fall in love with the characters, and the writing is really great in this film. And it's very, very easy to like these characters and to follow them on their tragic journey. So that concludes my review of Escape from the Planet of the Apes. Next up is a big one, Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. And Conquest is an intense, intense film. So I'm really excited to review that one. But thank you for joining me on Life Reviewed. As always, please like, comment, and subscribe. And any feedback is good feedback. And I do want to hear from you. So thank you, and we'll see you in Conquest.